World Social Summit and talk about the meaningful engagement of youth and right holders. A very, very important and pertinent discussion today. Um, we have distinguished panelists here, and we'll be hearing from them very soon. So it's been 30 years. In 1995, the first World Summit for Social Development was held in Copenhagen. And 30 years after, as we are heading towards the second World Social Summit, which is going to be held in Qatar, Doha, this November, there will be heads of states and governments recommitting to the Copenhagen Declaration. So as that is happening, what is at the heart of that declaration are three core agendas, that is poverty eradication, decent work for all, and social inclusion. And when the first summit happened, the summit aimed for a people-centered framework for social development for all. So it is very important that we take stock of the progress that has happened in the past 30 years. And it is very important to look at it through the lens of the youth, because without meaningful participation, no declaration will come to the actual fruition. Young people need to be included in all the preparatory negotiations part of this declaration, and to learn more about what the Major Group for Children and Youth has done, I would like to ask my colleague, my dear friend, and one of the organizing partners of the Major Group of Children and Youth to tell us more about how MTCY, as the official youth mechanism, has been engaged in the preparatory processes leading up to Doha.
Thank you, Jolly. Just very briefly, just to give some several remarks. As several of you might know, we briefly touched on yesterday, the second World Social Summit will take place in Doha, Qatar this year. Jolly already gave a very good overview of what it follows up from. But just to highlight that the role that young people have been playing in the lead up to the summit, this preparation process has been underway for the past 1 year. It actually started in May 2024 when MTCY and the Global Coalition on Action Against Poverty hosted a consultation session for youth and civil society at the UN Civil Society Conference on Summit of the Future in Nairobi, so almost a year and a half ago, followed by consultations and dialogues at SLPF last year, at the Global People's Assembly in September last year, followed by which we launched a youth inputs to CSOC in December 2024. CSOC 63 in February this year saw massive participation of young people, where we had 40 to 50 young people on ground. And youth were involved as speakers and interventions from the floor in all the 5 interactive dialogues that took place at CSOC. Followed by which we had ECOSOC Youth Forum, in which there was a dedicated plenary on the World Social Summit that took place, co-organized by DESA and the youth constituencies. There's also a dedicated working group on World Social Summit that is taking place that convenes a lot of young people. And on the road, so what comes in the next 2 months is we're very pleased to share, and the Secretary of Third Committee was here yesterday and he talked about it. There will be a youth-led event linked to Third Committee that will take place in the beginning of October. And we're looking forward to hosting a youth forum in Doha, Qatar on the 3rd of November, just a day before the summit, similar to what young people did for F54, UN Oceans Conference, and many other convenings this year and the previous year. I would like to state that in terms of ambition, we have been delighted to see the leadership from agencies, especially DESA and ILO, who we have on the panel, in driving real ambition and momentum towards the World Social Summit. More needs to be done in order to make sure that we are centered and grounded in the Copenhagen commitments and their follow-up. And we do not have backsliding on critical issues, including SRHR and human rights and other issues that affect marginalized communities, especially women, children, and youth and young girls. I also want to point out that CSOC, as the declaration already affirms, would continue to be the body that would take stock of the progress of the summit and its outcomes and every year. And we strongly believe that it should come back to its 2 weeks model, the way it used to be, especially to focus on some critical issues that have been dropped since it went back to being a week. So these are some insights from my end, and I must say we are truly grateful to have a large but a very diverse panel of speakers today. And I'm going to pass back to Jolly to moderate this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ratna. So, building on the insights that you just provided and what work that HSCY has been doing, obviously, many of you here are part of the District of Children and Youth too, and they will be updating you on what are the possible engagement avenues that comes up, opportunities for you all to engage. Now, our first panelist today is the Principal Social Affairs Officer from UN DESA, Konstantinos Papadakis. Sir, building right on the insight from you, Ratna, I'd like to ask you, what are the actual objectives of the World Social Summit, particularly its outcome document, the Doha Political Declaration, and we'd like you to ask specifically about the relevance for young people, for us. And lastly, what does the post-summit and its follow-up look like? We'd be really glad to hear your insights on these particular questions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for, first of all, for the invitation, all the timing partners. I mean, this is a great opportunity for me representing the UN, for ILO and other participants here who have, we have all participated in the negotiating process in general, in one way or another, where DESA supported actually the member states, which negotiated over the last few months and reached an agreement on a draft political declaration to be formally adopted on the 4th of November in Doha. Now, in terms of your first question, the objectives, I will be very succinct and schematic. First of all, taking stock of the progress made since the adoption of the Copenhagen. Copenhagen, we constituted the basis for the MDGs and then for the SDGs. Okay? So we're taking stock of progress, but also gaps in the implementation of the, especially of the 3 main objectives, which was still are poverty eradication, the promotion of employment and decent work, and social inclusion. Now, and of course, giving through this process also a momentum to the Agenda 2030, which is 5 years almost before its expiration. So it's a timely moment for doing that. The second is aligning policy actions with today's challenges and opportunities, such as those shaped by technological changes, innovations, demographic shifts, but also disruptions like conflicts and the climate crisis. Third, mobilize concrete actions to address unresolved social challenges and build resilience and just and sustained societies. Fourth, strengthen the political will of governments to support social policy, which is effectively implemented, but also support social spending. And finally, important, reinforcing international cooperation in this area. There cannot be successful action in the area of socioeconomic policy unless there is also international cooperation. Because the problems of today do not recognize national borders. Unless we have a solid multilateral system that is promotes solidarity and international interstate collaboration, but also multi-stakeholder engagement, and this is where you come into play, we cannot be successful. Now, you said, what are the links? What are the links with the youth? I was going through
relevance.
The relevance. It is very relevant, especially for the youth. And and what I'm going to give you here is my interpretation of, let's say, my reading of the political declaration as it has been negotiated, and as I said, will be adopted formally in Doha. I have 5 takeaways as to the relevance for the youth. The first takeaway is that, and I attended the negotiations. Okay, the first is that all member states agree on the need to invest in the youth potential. This awareness underpins several commitments in the current text of the political declaration, such as guaranteeing access to quality education, skills development, decent work, ensuring living wages, or mobilizing social spending to create those environments that will enable youth to create and innovate. The second takeaway or key message when one reads the political declaration is that of the youth inclusion in governance. Throughout the preambular language, but also in the call to action different paragraphs, we recognize the whole of society approach to governance, inclusive governance, participatory approach to policy making. Those are important entry points also for the youth, and I can come back to this in a minute when I will talk about the follow-up action. Now, the third takeaway relates to protecting youth. This is about ensuring social protection, food security, safe schools, healthcare, and housing, delivered together in an integrated manner, not one at the expense of the other. As one expert recently said on the occasion of the launch of the social justice, the status of social justice report by the ILO the day before yesterday, the choice should never be between paying the bills or going to school or putting food on the table or living decently and healthy. All these things must happen at the same time. And my fourth and final takeaway relates to the question of equipping youth for the future. This is the underlying assumption of a number of commitments in the text of the political declaration that relate, for instance, to the question of closing the digital divide, fostering entrepreneurship, including for youth, promoting lifelong learning, digital literacy, empowering youth to navigate technological, economic, and climate transitions, and all these areas where really youth can play a very important role at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, and I would like to, let's say, conclude perhaps this by saying that what I see interesting in this declaration, to answer your question of follow-up, is that the many entry points that youth has in terms of participating in the different reviews, reporting, and monitoring mechanisms that the declaration calls for, with a view to assessing the implementation record as of 2031. This is, of course, above all the state responsibility, but again, through the multi-stakeholder approach, youth should, and I believe will have a say in this process. And of course, the feedback will be extremely useful for correcting course in terms of effectively implementing. And of course, this necessitates, and I will finish with this, both action at the national level and at the international level. At the international level, of course, at the UN, one entry point, through the regional economic commissions and other entry points. At the national level, there are also instances like economic and social councils, social dialogue, tripartite councils, which also give access to youth with a view to better implementing socioeconomic policy. Sorry for being long, I'm passionate about this, and thank you again for this very interesting question.
Thank you so much. That was a really good response and very detailed. We really appreciate you for specifically pointing out those points of how the declaration is relevant for youth. And we do, as representing all the young people, like we do believe and we agree that multilateralism should thrive more than ever right now. It needs to be a political as well as a civic commitment, because one of the objectives of this session is also to strategize and discuss how other stakeholders, civil society can also be a part of it. Young people can also be the architects, not just the beneficiaries of a declaration, but also how can we be the co-creators and keep each other in check. And lastly, to follow up on one of the last points that you mentioned about the follow-up, that is a really important point. Follow-up mechanisms, monitoring and reporting, especially how do we keep each other and the member states and everyone involved accountable. That is something that we do have to delve on as we progress and talk about.
And informed, not only accountable.
Exactly.
Because some people do not know your views, your
Yes.
objectives, your interests.
Yes. That is true too. Yes, I actually have, I had something to say about that. But again, like we will build on these points. We'll get back on that later. But thank you so much for the detailed response. Now moving on next, we have Dina Corell from ILO. Just 2 days ago, there was a high-level event on the margins of the General Assembly at the UN headquarters here, where the ILO launched its inaugural report on the state of social justice in the world, and the session was about discussing how we can renew solidarity and rebuild trust, it was a very insightful meeting, and the Ministry of Children and Youth had an opportunity to give our remarks on how we are working towards the preparatory process leading up to the summit of Doha. So, Dino, I just want to ask you. Oh, sure, right. If you could give your insights on how can we utilize the World Social Summit to mobilize ambition towards decent work and social justice for all, and with particular focus on young people.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me well? Yeah. No, thanks a lot. Thanks to you. Thank you for inviting the ILO. And it's really a great pleasure to see that you are here and that you are organizing this, right? I guess it's already an encouraging sign that this conference is taking place alongside UNGA. It's not easy coming in after Costas and talking about social summit, among other things. But maybe I can add a few points and perspectives from a world of work perspective, in particular with the focus, as you said, on the situation of young people and what the social summit can do in that regard. But first of all, and Costas also mentioned that, of course, we are meeting at a time where we see substantive and very rapid transformations in the world of work, right? The trends have already been mentioned: climate change, demographic developments, the technological transition is really having a very fast impact on the jobs of today, the jobs of tomorrow, and of course, young people in the labor market. Just to say a few words about the situation of young people in the labor market today, we have seen signs of progress, in particular with regard to the headline youth unemployment rate, which has come down since the COVID-19 crisis, but it doesn't represent the whole picture. In particular, one figure that is of great concern to us is the so-called NEET rate, young people not in education, employment, or training, which affects 1 out of 5 young people today. And for too many young women and men, the transition from school to work remains a story of lost potential. And young women in particular are nearly 3 times more likely than young men to be in this category. So here we see an alarming reminder that there are persistent gender inequalities in the labor market that limit young women's progression in their career paths. And the NEET rate is more than a data point, of course. It symbolizes the barriers preventing young people from realizing their full potential. But even those who do manage to find a job often land themselves in temporary low-wage and vulnerable forms of employment without a formal contract, and all the challenges that are associated with that. And then, as a last point of that, there's a mental toll of this on young people with serious impacts on their well-being. So how can the World Social Summit help us in this situation? And first and foremost, and I think it has already been mentioned, it's a very timely opportunity to refocus national, regional, and global efforts around the core commitments from the 1995 Copenhagen Declaration on Social Development, including with regards to full employment and decent work as a foundational element of social development more broadly. Reference has been made to what is in the political declaration, the draft political declaration that has been agreed, not yet adopted. And among the sort of action items or commitments among member states, with a particular focus on young people, there is a recognition that measures need to be taken to tackle the youth employment rate, the youth unemployment rate, to address the integration into the labor market, and also to quality education, training, and entrepreneurship, and also, of course, access to universal social protection. These are just issues that are directly linked in the declaration to young people, but of course, social development, social justice more broadly is relevant to all of us. My last point, and I will come to stop, sorry for taking so long, is the key question of partnerships. How do we come together? How can we make sure that we can maintain the momentum coming out of Doha to turn those commitments into meaningful action? I think this goes back to the question of follow-up. The operationalization of the summit outcomes will require a coordinated effort by all relevant stakeholders, governments, civil society, employers and workers, organizations, the private sector, but of course, young people themselves. And the continued meaningful engagement of young people will be particularly important to achieve this shared ambition. Again, it's a very encouraging sign, I find, that we find ourselves in this space here today, a conference that is organized by young people. Lastly, the World Social Summit is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to elevate the social dimension of sustainable development, and it's really an opportunity for all of us to drive meaningful change, advance decent work and social justice, and ensure that young people can realize their aspirations everywhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your insights and your detailed overview on the question that we proposed on how we could utilize this World Social Summit in order to achieve decent work and social justice for all, but particularly focusing young people. And like the report that was launched on the state of social justice, yes, as you mentioned, there are positive data, there is reduction in poverty, and other improvements, but at the same time, there's a stark contrast because there is equally entrenched inequalities in societies. And especially young people are the ones who are directly affected because their voices are not heard, they're not meaningfully, they do not have those platforms to be meaningfully engaged in the decision-making processes. And in terms of as we're moving on to another speaker who is from Pakistan, especially, in my country back home in Nepal, young people, there are structural barriers to youth employment. More than 20% of young people are unemployed. They do not have access to very and equal opportunities. A lot of them, due to unemployment and decent work, have to migrate abroad and work like exploitative labor. And that has really fractured the state of social justice in my country, Nepal. And as we're moving towards the other speaker, who is from Gyan, Pakistan, and Start Youth Platform, the trend that we are seeing right now is the unrest, the civil unrest of young people. And we've seen that just now. The headlines today might be about Nepal, but the same thing happened in Bangladesh, in Indonesia, Sri Lanka, and it is a warning, it is not a sign. young people from everywhere, they are raising their voices. They want to be heard. They want their voices to matter. So, for Sahad, as a young person, as a youth from Pakistan, what are your expectations from this World Social Summit?
Thank you very much. Again, I'm honored and privileged to be part of this very experienced panel. So directly, since we have like a very short of time, so I'll just go to the points. I think just to give a kind of background, when the process that are already in place are not being met or not being respected by the governments. So, of course, the people who needs to be addressed will definitely come out and speak out. So, since you mentioned like I'm from South Asia, and most of the South Asian countries are facing right now a lot of social and political unrest, including Pakistan, even though it's not maybe not a lot into the news, but there is a lot of things that are going on, not just by young people, but also other stakeholders, including the farmers. And right now we are facing huge flooding, and there's a lot of disasters going on there in almost all the provinces of my country. But at the same time, we can see that in India, in Nepal, as you mentioned. So this monsoon weather creates a lot of issues. So when we get into the root of these issues, of course, the government is not respecting their commitments. And when we see high-level political forum where governments should be talking about their progress on their commitments on sustainable development goals, but mostly they come there and show us the videos and the presentations that are more like come visit us. It's like that kind of presentations. So I think it's very important that in this social summit, I hope that we will be able to come up with more strong and concrete steps to make accountable the governments and the states. And we can also maybe see that how the main stakeholders can participate in it, not just that the states are asking questions from the states. And it's not just a question, but I feel like it's very important. And we are already like at 2025, 5 years left. And what is the progress in sustainable development goals? Like where we are right now? I don't think so. We have even maybe surpassed 10% of that, what was committed back in 2015. So at the same time, I feel we also need to be accountable as a young person, as a youth-led organization, as a donor agencies, maybe as in stakeholders, that what we have done so far. Okay, yeah, we raise voices, but maybe we are raising voices in silos. We are maybe not working together to put pressure on the governments, on the multilateral processes, on the donors who are responsible to focus on the issues, and especially when it comes, because being a youth-led organization and a young person, it's very important that when it comes to financial resources, young people and youth-led organizations are far behind than other organizations that are working at the ground level. So I feel like there will be a lot of issues, and what I expect from the social summit is that we come up with strong and tangible steps towards, okay, let's try to figure out what we can do in these 5 years, and let's see what next agenda is coming up after 2030, and how we can make sure that the post sustainable development goals agenda is more specific, and there is more accountability where we can participate, not just asking questions and maybe trying to be part of the process. There should be a proper participation mechanism and accountability mechanism through the stakeholders in the post sustainable development agenda, because we have only 5 years left, and I don't think so we will be able to make extensive progress on that. So I would end here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And we guys, like we share the same views, but in terms of like taking stock of the progress and all, Iowa has done a commendable job in terms of the report because it has key findings and indicators. It helps us identify gaps and what we could do better. So reports like that, those are very helpful. And the next speaker today is Jack Kuferman, the organizing partner of the Stakeholder Group on Aging. I have one particular question for you, sir. A very important one. How has the civil society engagement been for the World Social Summit too? And what are the key priorities of the Stakeholder Group on Aging on this summit?
Thank you. As was said, I am the co-focal point of the Stakeholder Group on Aging, part of these groups and other stakeholders with regard to the global efforts on review of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, on the questions that were raised, before we get to that, I'm going to make this an interactive session. For everyone in this room, please raise your hand if you are getting older.
Of course. Feel it more.
I'm sorry, I can see some people who did not raise their hand. Raise your hand. Now, that sets the stage that this is perhaps the most universal aspect of humanity. Every single human being ages. Now, how do we partner between younger people and older people? Everybody in this room dreams of being a healthy older person. Is there anybody who doesn't dream for that? I don't see any hands. Now, what we're going to do is we're talking about what do we want for the World Social Summit. As the constituency of older people, one of the things we want to increase the visibility of older people and an understanding and a linkage between the youth constituency and the older constituency. If you don't know, the concerns are really the same. How they manifest themselves is a little different, but they are the same. The world generally ignores older people, despite the fact that it is the fastest growing age cohort. And as many of you may know, that the number of older people will exceed the number of younger people very soon. So why are we being ignored? This offers an amazing opportunity for the linkages between youth and age and older. We're hoping that at the World Social Summit that we'll be able to reach out to member states to inform them and to educate them as effectively as the youth constituency has done. Youth has done a fantastic job of identifying their concerns and identifying potential solutions. We want to work with them. We always want to work with them. And we want to find out not only what we have in common, because we know that, but what are the solutions? There are, 1.3 billion youth and basically the same number of older people. When you add those two things together, that means that the two groups together are almost a plurality of humankind. There's a lot of power there. We expect to find that kind of synergy and that kind of opportunities for solutions. Let me give you a couple of examples of where younger people and older people working together towards a common cause make a difference. In Sierra Leone, there had been a project about dealing with Ebola and COVID. It was older people, younger people. They divided the tasks. The older people were the organizers, the younger people were the implementers. Now also in Malawi, as again, part of COVID, I'm very familiar with an initiative where this young lady, she was 21, she basically started a home for people who have been displaced by their families, whether due to accusations of witchcraft or because the families were not able to sustain their older relatives. And now this is a thriving community in rural Malawi. There are also other examples where younger people and older people working together in sustaining the mangroves. There are innumerable opportunities. However, the world has never really embraced this as an opportunity for as agents of change. We have the opportunity at Doha and here. We have the opportunity to link older people and younger people for effective, not just words. I'm tired of words.
Yeah.
Where is the real long-term social change? We live in a very challenging world. Nobody can deny that. And how do we make that, using that power of collaboration to make things a little better? I want to also reflect on what the World Social Summit from the perspective of history. Copenhagen was about dealing with the concerns of people who are not necessarily in the mainstream. Doha is the opportunity to amplify that. We have the opportunity. We cannot forget about that. And as has been properly discussed, the outcome of Doha is a great thing. And what about the follow-up? That's where all of us together, everybody in this room, and maybe a billion other people, can work towards making the world a better place for older people and for younger people. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those were wonderful insights, and I'd like to reiterate, I don't know what everybody said, also that the three pillars upon what the summit is built upon: poverty eradication, social exclusion, and decent work for all. These are deeply intersectional and intergenerational. Without intergenerational collaboration, there cannot be the 2030 agenda cannot be realized. So we do want to, and we want to work with you, and we need to actually, like, we'd love to like talk to you after.
I can't wait for that.
Yes, because even the anecdotes you shared, we'd love to like sit down with you and talk more after this panel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And now, our next panelist is the UN Youth Delegate from Qatar, Salam Al-Hadfa. So Salam, from your perspective as a youth person from Qatar, how do you think can the youth voices be better included in shaping its outcomes and implementation?
Thank you, Johnny, for your question. First of all, I'd like to thank MDCY for this panel and this opportunity. As a young person from Qatar, we started to see voices or youth voices to start moving from the margins to the center of the decision making. We are not just the future, instead we are also the present. Our input directly affects the success of policies and programs. Also, like Qatar has already made these implementations and concrete moves toward this direction. For example, one example for the Qatar UN delegates program. We made a lot of training sessions to train youth Qataris to represent Qatar in the UN meetings, not just as observers, but also as actively moving toward this implementation and shaping international discussions. We also have the natural or the national youth policy, youth consent. This developed with 66 government and semi-government entities to institutionalize policies from across the whole country, sustainability, education, culture, and employment. This ensured that youth aren't an afterthought, but a driving force for national development. We have also another important initiative, that is the Sport and Youth Excellence Strategy. Quality life and future youth. It connects health, well-being, talent, development with national goals, giving young people the clear ways and pathways to turn passion into skills and skills into leadership. Globally platforms, we have the Doha Forum Youth Edition as it brings youth from dozens of countries to Doha, especially in December, to engage in justice, economics, and technology proposals. These proposals themselves, they don't stay on slides. No, we see them firsthand with the decision makers. They reach them, and also they help shape the policies itself. And now through the major group for children and youth, MGCY, young people are being accredited, more national, more globally, formally engaged. For example, we also have the World Social Summit in Doha this November coming. This is a big example. This is a real chance for young people not to just observe, but also to contribute with the global issues. From the social policy, pushing for inclusion, equality, and fair systems. All of these aren't hypothetical initiatives. No, actually, they are already changing how the young people think, how we move, how we participate, and sharing our outcomes and implementations. But to go further, we need to embed youth at every stage of policy design, increase funding for youth-led pilot projects, and make sure that youth participate in these summits not just as observers, but also as contributors. We are the guests. We are the future. Finally, I'd like to invite all of the youth advocates in Doha this November for the social summit. As we say in Arabic, مرحبا بالجميع في دوحة الجميع. It translates to welcome all in Doha.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing what initiatives are going on the national level there and how young people are being involved. Thank you so much. We do need to hear what countries are doing to so that we can share the best practices, learn from the lessons, and share insights together. The other speaker, the last one today, panelist, is chair of the board of the Global Policy Forum, Barbara Adams. You were involved in the first WSSD. 30 years later, in 2025 now, we'd love to hear insights on what lessons from the first summit remain the most relevant for shaping the second summit today. And please share insights on what needs to change in the CSCC.
Thank you very much. Yes, I was in Copenhagen 3 decades ago. I was part of the UN Central Team for organizing that conference. as well as other major global conferences of the 90s, which is the first lesson I would like to draw on. What happened in that decade of global UN conferences was they came almost straight after and were put in place at the end of what was then Cold War. And so what was happening was that the UN was in the forefront of basically drafting a whole series of new forward-looking commitments and programs to things that were, to use UN speak, non-military threats to security. Up until that time, during the Cold War, the focus was on the military threats to security. At that stage, mainly nuclear weapons, but not exclusively. So many of the issues that we talk about today and that we've seen captured in some of the Sustainable Development Goals were those non-military threats. Obviously, the first lesson as we approach WSSD is we have to face the fact that's not the world we live in. The world we live in today is a completely different era. It's of rampant violence, of genocide, multi-dimensional violence. I don't know how many people were listening to the heads of state and government speeches this week in the UN. We heard about drone warfare and how it's going to accelerate. We've heard about trade warfare and issues to do with tariffs. We're hearing about multi-dimensional violence and conflict in all kinds of ways, which obviously affect all of what I've termed, or what the UN termed, in true UN style, non-military threats to security. Something else that was very, very important during those conferences of the 90s, just look at the range of topics. Environment and development in Rio, gender, human rights, population and development, and capping off with a conference on how to finance all of this. Here is another big lesson and a completely different world we live in. What we had in Copenhagen was how important the public sector was, how important public finance was. Now, of course, we're struggling to just get the richest people on earth to pay their fair share of taxes. We are living in a very, very different era. We have finance going to finance more military expenditure. The UN is just coming out with a report showing the impact of that on being able to actually achieve the SDGs. And so a second lesson, as we are charting our how to change the future for us conversation, is we have to recognize the world we live in and the external pressures and obstacles that we are all facing, whatever our age, with regard to this. We have got a situation now in the world where, in fact, investors, big investors, can sue states through trade and investment agreements and not the other way around. We have also faced a situation in the world that we're living in today where we have to recognize where do we actually do international cooperation? Where do we do cross-border negotiations in the world today? It's not concentrated to the same extent in the UN. We have to look at the realities of the G20. We've got this conversation going on about BRICS. The Pact for the Future has just recognized that the International Monetary Fund is an independent authority, and therefore, frankly, to someone like me, I have no idea why it's still part of the UN system. If it's not accountable to human rights, if it has a totally different governance, a $1, one vote, as opposed to one country, one vote. And for the issues that we're talking about now, we are further away than we were in recognizing those key social sectors in social justice as rights, as economic, social, and cultural rights. We are further away from that point of view because basically we are now looking to solve those problems in the marketplace. And sorry, market solutions don't bring you human rights. So what do? I know that's the World Summit. We're going forward to Doha soon. I would offer three things very quickly. First one is we have to put the key issue that's affecting all of this in the center of the UN agenda, and it's inequalities. It's not only income inequalities, it's so-called non-discrimination inequalities, discrimination against youth, against women, against indigenous people, etc., and wealth inequalities. These are all dimensions which are not, we do not have a governance process anywhere that tackles these issues. That would be my vision for the future, frankly, of the Commission on Social Development. We also need to actually really take a hard look at how we actually even measure progress. How do we measure progress? GDP. GDP invisibilizes unpaid care work. GDP undervalues the informal sector, where so many people have employment opportunities in developing countries. And I think the other thing we have to look at is how to make these outsourced global governance places accountable to the UN Charter and to norms and standards like human rights. Now, I don't know how many of you have read the political declaration. It's not there. Okay, just, cut to the chase, it's not there. Bits and pieces, fine. So what I think would be really important going forward is to launch something like was launched a while ago when we were confronted with the environmental catastrophe. There was something called the Brundtland Commission, and there were 2 years of consultations of people around the world on their priorities, the insecurities and inequalities for today that should be on that agenda. And if we could launch such a process, and the UN we can do this, and then in 2 years' time at a special session of the Commission on Social Development to take the results, to look at them, and to then start moving towards a whole new governance body under the auspices of the UN that would be in equalities, social development, social justice, and sustainable peace, high-level council. So you have all the work to do, and I will be with you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I will give the other panelists to respond to Barbara on her specific suggestions, but in terms of measuring progress, GDP growth should translate into the well-being of people. Yes, we get.
Say more, but stop
Yes.
because I'm an economist. I could be a pain in the
Yeah, but thank you so much for your insights, and it is so good to see a fellow Nepali on the panel. I'm so sorry when we started, we were waiting and I didn't realize you were already here. But Pushpa Joshi, young feminist from Nepal, Asian Pacific Resource and Research Center for Women, Arrow. So Pushpa, from a young feminist perspective, what systemic changes are needed to ensure that the summit addresses intersectional inequalities and advances inclusive social policies that reflect the realities of women and girls? We'd love to hear your insights on this particular question.
Thank you so much, John, for the question, and thank you to Major League of Children and Youth for this opportunity. I'm also a WASO fellow, and answering your question, definitely systemic change is what we are now demanding, and it is not optional and non-negotiable because intersectional inequality is not an accident. It is the predictable result of global economic and political systems rooted in patriarchy, colonialism, and all forms of inequality. So truly this reflect the realities of the most marginalized women and girls, including young women and girls, the World Social Summit must be a moment to fundamentally change the rules of the system or the game. And for this, I'd like to reiterate the fact that the World Social Summit must ensure meaningful and inclusive engagement of young people, especially young women and girls. And when selecting the participation, it also must ensure the intersectionality and diversity within the young people, because young people are not homogeneous community, and we have diversity in terms of sexual orientation, gender identity, geography, disability, and other forms. And another, from talking from a feminist perspective, since we also have distinguished guests from ILO and economists in the panel, I'd like to stress on economic justice as well, because the economic justice is important by dismantling the patriarchal reliance on women's unpaid labor, which we have been stressing for decades. And WSSD must mandate the systemic integration of the 5R framework for unpaid care work, which also includes recognition, reduction, and redistribution. So by demanding significant public investment in universal quality, social, and care infrastructure. So next is we also must demand a structural power shift in governance, because inclusive policies cannot be created without inclusive power structure. So furthermore, to fuel the change in the ground, the summit must commit to establishing a direct, flexible funding to provide resources to grassroots movement, because I think grassroots movement are the soul of the true change. And by providing the direct funding to the grassroots movements, I think we will strengthen our movement even more towards more gender inclusive policies and programs. And there must be systemic overhaul of accountability and data mechanism, because what isn't measured is not managed, and we need data which is inclusive of all the intersectional identities of people around us, and it should be disaggregated based on sex, gender, sexuality, profession, and everything. So similarly, the summit must strengthen and resource independent social justice mechanism to tackle gender-based violence which takes place within the social and political arena. So yeah, I'd like to highlight on these various pillars which are very important for the systemic change that we have been advocating for. Just want to reiterate the meaningful and inclusive participation of young people, economic justice, and abolition of all those systemic inequalities, including patriarchy, colonialism, and all the other inequalities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Our colleague from ILO, Dino, he has to leave because of other commitments. Thank you so much, Dino. Thank you for always being a friend of MTCY. We look forward to working with you and the ILO. Thank you so much, Dino. And thanks for the question. So we have a segment. We wanted this discussion to be interactive. So after all our panelists have given their insights, we would also like to hear from you, the audience. And if any one of you would like to give your insights and maybe like ask questions to a particular panelist, if you have any follow-up questions, please make it 1 minute, less than 1 minute, because we want as many people to engage directly with the panelists here. And also, everybody here would like to know and learn more from you. That is even more important. So, please raise your hands. Okay. She will be passing the mic.
One question.
All questions together. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, thank
you so much for the opportunity.
Please introduce yourself a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my name is Rila Jas and I'm from Pakistan. I'm doing a master's here at University of Notre Dame in Global Affairs, concentrating like the peace and social justice. And when it comes to peace studies, or when it comes to conflict resolution or social justice, I heard you guys mention about accountability, about the GDP doesn't mention the growth it should be. I myself have worked in Pakistan with different NGOs, and I've seen like the NGOs and like the UN itself, it failed to enforce the accountability mechanisms and like just is for the youth. We are seeing right now that youth is misled by disinformation. Youth is misled by surveillance, by misinformation on all social media channels, and it is misled by the organizations themselves. So, like, how do we ensure that it is not about only to reclaiming the agency, but rather like how you could reclaim the power? I've seen you guys talk about like we need to collaborate, we need to come forward, we need to brainstorm on the ideas of youth collaboration. But like when it comes to actual agency and when it comes to actual power, like how do you guys think you can proclaim that agency and how do you can better participate in this formation? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And can you please keep the questions brief
Yes.
so that panelists can answer?
Short and concise, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Kevin Johnson is in from Trinidad and Tobago. Very good. My question is along the line. We are here to talk about gather ideas, conversing on how we can give youths the voice out there. My question would be to the panel: are we honestly open to hear and listen to what young people have to say and actually address it without lying to them?
Thank you for the question. Noted. Okay, we will take one more question.
All right, thank you. My name is Hamza, I'm from Sudan. My question is, I work in marginalized areas in Sudan, in particular Darfur, West Sudan, and I travel to many West African countries. As we know, economy is dominated by seniors, not by young people. So once you don't have hand in hand, you don't have decisions, you don't have the power to contribute in decision making. And youth do not have any hand in decision making, do not have any power in the economy, do not even have positions in NGOs. And we know that people who are living in those marginalized areas, they lost their confidence in NGOs and United Nations. Nobody, believes in NGOs, nobody believes in United Nations. They see them form, but they don't believe in it. They don't believe in these decisions, whether they're, impact or not. So how can you revive this trust? How can you, and what are solutions for youth to be engaged in the economy, in decision making? Not only making decisions, but also we need them to be engaged in the economy, having businesses, so they could contribute, massively to developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we take the lady over there and just quickly go through all of them?
We're already over time. This is already lunch, and I'm very sorry for the participants. If you would like to use up your lunchtime, then I don't know, raise your hands. Let's do a little voting. Would you like to ask more questions or just one? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Just one.
Hello, good morning everyone. My name is Sarah Jallo. I am from the Gambia. I am a data scientist and a data governance specialist. My question is, how do we youths move from co-collaborators to co-authors? Because the policies, if they are going to be about us, we should be part of the decision makers. So how do we move from collaborators to co-creators instead of just beneficiaries? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think the first three questions were kind of similar from Pakistan, TNT, Sudan. So I'll go with the same being a young person when I started working. So I was thinking and believing as you guys think about the systems. But then the question is like, what are the alternatives and what is my role, right? So the main thing is what you can do is what exactly you're doing right now, asking questions. And never, if you believe in something, never go away from it. Keep trying. I will just give you one example. I remember because I believed in family planning, I believed in sexual reproductive health and rights of young people. Coming from Pakistan, it's very, very hard to speak out with the government, with the even with the community because of the different reasons. So you have to be consistent. You have to have a logic and cultural context at the same time, facts. So you have to do your homework first. I mean, I know nothing is easy in this world when you are facing issues, but you have to do your best to address those issues, and always find like-minded people as our friends. I always receive great support from elders, and that is the key. If you have elders with you, we call it youth-led partnership, and you can achieve a lot of things. Even I have been part of the official delegation of Pakistan to the UN just because of that partnership. So I'll end here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you. We definitely want to hear your feedback.
Those are extremely important questions. I would like to stress perhaps the question of participatory governance. It was, some of you hinted to it, and how can we really effectively participate in not only implementing but shaping the policies which are at the end of the day meant to address your needs and be in line with your interests. Well, participate in every opportunity of policy-making structures that exist at the top level, knowing at the same time and keeping always in mind that by participating in these institutions, your voice also could be more controlled and more co-opted. There are risks also. That is why a corollary to this participation in this process should always be, as our colleague also reminded us, a grassroots mobilization. Perhaps you should not expect to hear that from a point of view of a UN civil servant, but all the studies show that it is not only the formal voice that plays a role, but also the protest and mobilization capacity that a society has, especially youth. You have a very strong voice.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I think a lot of the questions are obviously confronting what we see as power today. And I think we all know that power today is defined in ways that we don't feel we're a part of. So I think that we've also got to you've got to ask yourselves, where else is power? And what I would say when I follow what the UN does a lot, obviously, there's a lot of discussion at the moment about how a few dominant countries, while they might not be brilliant at home, are definitely controlling international cooperation. And there's a lot of very interesting conversation going on both in the official UN channels and all around the place on the importance of small and medium-sized countries and how that notion of collectivity and working together is so important to redistribute power. And I think the same applies here with us. The trust, someone asked about trust. It's both individual commitment, but I think trust also comes when you feel that you are really part of a collective that supports you. So don't ignore that.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Barbara. Okay, I'm getting. Less than a minute.
Yeah.
We have to wrap up. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question about co-creating, being a co-creator and a co-collaborator. So what we have done in Nepal, in the organization that are engaged with that, we have institutionalized the participation, engagement of young people into the board, into our own organizational policy. So that means that it's written and signed by all board members and it has been institutionalized. So it does not mean that we have to beg to be included in the board or decision-making position. The organization itself is compelled to have the young people as board members. So I think the same thing should be done in all decision-making levels, including UN and state level forums, so that young people's participation is ensured in all levels. So institutionalization is what I'd like to share.
Thank you, Pushpa.
Sure. I just wanted everybody here to remember the rights and the concerns and the advances that we're all familiar with have come from people who preceded you, particularly older people. Take that as your inspiration for making sure that the concerns at Doha are long-term positive social change. So that is age and youth in action. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. 30 seconds from you will not be always partner in relationship with children and youth. It will be important because we do have to be in touch and follow up with the nature group of children. 30 seconds.
Thank you, Lori. I know that we are 9 minutes over time. I just want to point out that a big gratitude to all the panelists that are having here with us today. It's been a very diverse panel, and especially for Io, Tessa, Barbara, Jack, Zahar, and Pushpa and Salam from Qatar. Thank you for being here. I want to mention that this is, you cannot have a social summit or an intergovernmental process without full engagement of rights holders, which means children and youth, women, indigenous people, and also stakeholder groups like aging, disability, communities discriminated or work and dissent. There is no future of multilateralism without such group. And I think that has to be a fundamental premise of as we move together. We know that the declaration, the outcome document of Social Summit has already been negotiated and approved. However, the Social Summit itself is a moment, and the months leading up to it now, the 2 months leading up to it now, is the moment where we demonstrate real ambition and commitment towards putting full attention on the issues that affect people globally, despite the regression that we are seeing that is taking place. There was a huge momentum in Summit of the Future last year, and UN 75 process 5 years ago, and we hope that we can build such a momentum. And it frankly will not happen without young people, civil society stepping up and driving that change. So we look forward to last 1.5 of pushing ahead that momentum and change that young people have been doing and organizing for the past year, and really bringing Social Summit and its agenda to hearts of where it belongs. It's not about, we do it for young people, we do it for those marginalized. We do not do it just for the bureaucrats or member states. We actually do all of this for genuine empowerment of children and youth, and that is a message that I'd like to end with, and a huge gratitude to all the panelists that are here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'll try to make it short, but us young people, we are enthusiasts. With our enthusiasm and our elder expertise, I think we can make great change, a big change. And my last advice to young people is to never stand up from the negotiation tables unhappy. Always make your rules. Never stand unhappy from the negotiation table. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. A huge round of applause for all our panelists for being here. It's beautiful right now. Thank you so much for taking time to be here to engage with the panel today.
Thank you for the incredible panel. It's truly a testament of how critical international youth conferences, because we cannot get enough of the panelists. We have a lot of questions, and this is also a great opportunity for those participants who didn't have the chance to ask questions to interact with our incredible panelists. I'm sure they will be hanging out around here because this is our lunchtime. We will be back at 1 p.m.
Okay, everything's okay. Perfect. For those who are using our iOS mobile app, please, this is a reminder that you have to mark your attendance in order to get the certificate. And if you're having any issues and troubles with that, please go ahead and go out to the registration desk and people will be able to help you out. Thank you all, and yeah, see you after the lunch.